every country deals with corruption, right?
Yeah.
It's like this unavoidable thing. But you found this document, Peru's actual code of ethics for public officials. It's like we get this peek behind the curtain how they're fighting corruption.
It's a really interesting way to look at this problem because it's not just, some hopeful, idealistic thing. This code, it really changes how people in Peru, everyday people, interact with their government. Everything from how services are run to how they expect the government officials to act.
And you said how they act, and it's fascinating to me how this document, it doesn't tiptoe around it. It just comes out and defines corruption. Like right there, they say it's the misuse of public or private power for undue benefit, violating ethical principles, duties, and fundamental rights.
Yeah, and that makes things so much bigger. It's not just about someone taking a bribe, right? It's really about any time that power is misused and goes against those core ideas of how people should act, those principles. So we're talking about misuse of power, the violation of trust. And actually about trust, there was this statistic in here that really stuck with me. It said that over 70% of Peruvians, they're okay with some forms of corruption. That's a lot of people. So what does that mean, Especially with this whole code trying to fight corruption. What do we make of that?
It shows how hard this really is, It's complicated. The document, it even connects this tolerance, being okay with corruption. It connects it to people not being sure what's right and wrong when you're a public servant. And they're saying it's not about just a few bad people. It's something bigger, deeper in the whole society.
So it's like some things are just accepted even if they're not okay in other places?
Exactly. It's not just a few bad people. It's the whole system needs to be fixed.
And what does this document say about what happens because people, they just accept this corruption?
It doesn't hold back. It says political instability. It says wasted money.
Yeah.
But the thing that really got me was how it talks about how trust disappears. Like trust in the whole society erodes.
Makes sense. If you can't trust your own government, who can you trust, right? That's got to cause problems everywhere.
It really does. You can't work together. The economy can't grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like even just talking to people, it gets harder. Trust. It's the foundation of a healthy society.
And this code, this is like them trying to rebuild that foundation, and they get into the details. There's this whole part about the core principles for people working in the government.
Yeah, and they don't just say be good. They actually list things out like respecting the law, being honest, being efficient, real solid principles to help people decide what to do.
One phrase, it really stuck out to me. It said, lealtad al Estado de Derecho, which is loyalty to the rule of law. It sounds so important, like something a knight would say. So how does this document take that big idea and make it real, make it something you can use every day?
They give you examples, like a police officer who doesn't take a bribe, even though it might be tempting, or a mayor who makes sure everyone on their staff is trained on the civil service law. They want everyone on the same ethical page.
It's like they're saying, look, this isn't just some idea, right? This is about how you actually do your job every single day as a public servant.
That's it. And they really want to make that clear. So they go from these big ideas, these principles, and they give you this really specific list of things you have to do, duties and things you absolutely cannot do, prohibitions for government officials.
Okay, so this is like the code's version of like you must and you must not.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these you must nots, these prohibitions, they're really specific, surprisingly so.
Well, now you got to tell me which ones really stood out to you.
This one got me thinking. They really emphasize transparency, and it's not just about being open when someone asks you something. It's about making sure people can get information, giving it to them without them even asking, making it clear that this information belongs to everyone.
Which makes sense, right? If you want a democracy to work, people got to know what's going on. But there's also this part about using government property, right? And I was thinking, like, it's not like most of us are driving around government cars or anything. What does this mean for, like, the average person working for the government?
It's about being accountable, even for the little things. The document, it actually uses this example, like even misusing office supplies. Like you're not supposed to use them for personal stuff.
No, interesting.
Yeah, it might seem, not that big of a deal. But it shows that anything the government has, even small things, they're trusted to officials for a reason, for their work.
So even something small, like if you take home a bunch of sticky notes, that could be like breaking that trust.
Exactly. And they really thought about everything when they put this code together. You can tell.
They did, yeah.
And you see that even more when you look at the prohibitions. There's some really interesting stuff in there, stuff you wouldn't expect.
Really? Like what?
Well, like they talk about conflicts of interest, right? And using information you're not supposed to. And get this, there's a whole section just on pressure, threats, and sexual harassment.
Yeah.
It's really important that they put those things in there.
Is it?
Because it shows that those actions, they're not just, bad PR. They're completely against the ethical code. They even give this example, like imagine a boss who says, "Hey, if you want this job, you got to do me a favor," which sadly happens a lot.
Yeah, it does.
It's a good reminder that these aren't just, rules in a book. They affect people's lives, real people. And speaking of what happens if you break the rules, this document, it doesn't just tell you the rules. It tells you what happens if you break them.
It's one thing to like tell people to be ethical, right?
Right.
But there's got to be like consequences, right? If you don't follow the rules. So what happens? What happens to these public officials in Peru if they break the code?
Well, they have this whole system, with different punishments. And it's not like just a slap on the wrist. It depends how bad what they did was, but you could get like a warning. They could suspend you or even fire you from your job in the government.
Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes they even ban you from working for the government again, like for years. So you can tell they're serious about keeping those ethical standards, high.
Makes sense. I mean, if you're trying to make people trust the government again, you got to show them that you'll do something about it if people break the rules. And they have two ways of making sure people follow the rules, right? The agencies themselves, they enforce it, but then there's also this Contraloria.
Right. It's like each government agency, they keep things in line themselves. But then you've got the Contraloria, which is like their version of a big accounting office. Or like a watchdog. They can do their own investigations if someone breaks the ethical rules, and they can punish people too.
So it's not like you can just cheat the system if your own agency looks the other way. Someone else is watching everyone. Adds a whole other level of like people being responsible.
Doing this whole deep dive, it's really got me thinking. They've got this super detailed code of ethics, right?
Yeah.
And all these ways to make people follow the rules. But does it actually work? Like in the real world, does it actually make the government more ethical? That is the big question, isn't it? It's easy to write down some rules. It's way harder to change how people act, those deep down habits and what they're used to.
For sure. Makes you think about what else matters besides just the rules themselves. Like what about the leaders or what the workplace is like, the culture or how open and transparent the whole society is. It's not simple.
It's really not.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all that, even if it's complicated, I think just having a code like this, it shows people what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
It sets the bar high.
Yeah.
And everyone knows the rules, what's expected, what's okay, and what's absolutely not okay.
It's a good reminder that trying to build a government that people can trust, that does the right thing, it's a journey, not a finish line.
I like that.
So for everyone listening, the next time you hear about, a scandal, someone in the government did something bad or they didn't act ethically, wherever it happens, think about this code we talked about. Think about the problems they're trying to fix in Peru, the values they're promoting. Does your own country have something like this? What else besides just rules could help make the government, act with integrity? It's a conversation worth having. And this Peruvian code, it's definitely given us a lot to think about.